Hello and welcome to The Extras. I'm Tim Lard, your host, and joining me today are animation historians George Feltenstein and Jerry Beck. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Well, I'm excited to talk some animation with you guys today, and we have some Hanna-Barbera to talk about, and I know a lot of people are also excited to hear some updates about the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 4, and just so that the listeners know, we will get to that. But I know that right off the bat, George, you wanted to talk about this brand new Blu-ray release of Top Cat, the Complete Series, which just came out September 17th. I know I'm excited. Haven't gotten my copy yet, but what do you want to talk about here on this release first?
These are 4K scans off the camera negatives, and they look amazing. And I have a tremendous fondness for the series, and I know a lot of people share my enthusiasm for it. And I'm just so grateful that we're finally able to bring this to the market because we started out with a goal. We started with Johnny Quest. We mastered that for Blu-ray, I think in 2019, and then the Jetsons. And we moved on to various series, and I wanted to get to Top Cat. And there were a lot of detours along the way, but to get to the camera negatives and what kind of shape were they in, they hadn't been touched since probably the mid 1960s. And the net result is a really beautiful set. And I think people are going to be very, very pleased with the improvement in the quality from what they've seen before. And it does justice to a series that really people are kind of surprised when they find out it only ran one primetime season on ABC, and what everybody saw thereafter were Saturday morning reruns, or even before that, it went into regular syndication, I think, for a season, like in the evenings. I'm not exactly sure about that, but Jerry will appreciate this. I remember Saturday early evening broadcasts on WNEW TV before the Saturday morning reruns.
Wow.
So,
I don't remember that.
I was like 2, but I remember it. Maybe I dreamed it, but it was black and white. We didn't have a color TV, and though the show was broadcast in black and white initially on ABC. I don't think they had color yet, but they made them in color, thankfully. And it's very exciting. Every one of these times we do this, it's a victory. And it's a victory for the fans of television animation. We can now say classic television animation because these shows are over 60 years old.
Yeah.
As much as we don't want to think so, that is the truth.
Jerry, I did want to ask you, Jerry, a little bit about the kind of the lead up to it's the second series in primetime that Hanna-Barbera did, but what was kind of the development, do you know, of the series?
Well, like the Flintstones was inspired by the Honeymooners. This series, of course, was inspired by the Phil Silvers Bilko show, and I mean, this was a real golden age of Hanna-Barbera. There's a period between 57 and, to me, 65, almost 10 years, where I feel like they almost could do no wrong. They had it all down. They had the artwork, they had the animators, they had the designs, they had the writers, they had, it's funny. I think of these Hanna-Barbera cartoons from that period as sophisticated. I think that's the word, a good word to go with Top Cat. The earliest cartoons, the Huckleberry Hounds, the Yogi Bears, the Quick Draw McGraws, they're written by people like Michael Maltese and Warren Foster. These were the great Warner Brothers cartoon writers, and they are smart. They're funny in that way. They're not just like funny because someone says they're funny or because there's a laugh track. they're actually really clever and really, really funny cartoons. And then they go from that to the Flintstones, which was on in primetime, and Top Cat the following year. And these are not written towards kids. These are written towards adults. And suddenly, if you think about it, those Hanna-Barbera cartoons from that late 50s period and the 60s primetime are pretty hip for what they are. The Jetsons would continue that. Even Johnny Quest would continue that. It wasn't until that a period around after Top Cat where they started going back down towards kids cartoons, kids cartoons that we love, the Secret Squirrels, and the Magilla Gorillas and things like that. But that all came after. This period, there's still, Hanna-Barbera had spent 15 years or more working at MGM, working on cartoons that for adults and all audiences, winning Oscars with Tom and Jerry. And so they weren't really used to making kids cartoons. It was unusual for them. They had to really, really rethink what they did and how they did it. Top Cat fits perfectly with what they were doing. They had done Alley Cats in an Alley, before with Tom and Jerry. This time, due to TV and the way things had changed and the influence of Bilko, they had in my opinion, an all-star voice cast. It's a great show. And as George says, and I don't think we want to oversay it, but we could, the quality of going back to the original negatives, seeing these things as no one has seen them, since the original release on ABC primetime way back when. I saw them then, but man, these things are really, really superior. And I'm just so happy that we're able to release this. And George said classic TV animation. I want to make it clear, classic television, period. That's what this is. So
yeah, because it was primetime. It was primetime TV.
That's my opening statement here today. But very, very happy to see this, and I believe I'm on here and doing some audio commentary.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Well,
what is it, George? Did you say this, that we brought over some of the special features?
Everything.
Okay, good. It's a lot of good stuff on here, and there's a whole feature on Arnold Stang, who I'm a big fan of, who is the voice of Top Cat. What's really funny about Stang, and by the way, stop me because I can talk at length about any of this, but the thing about Stang is he's playing this in-charge Bilko-esque character. His whole career was basically this little nebbish, this nerd, right? And he's in a mad world around the same time. They're filming that while they're making Top Cat. I mean, it's like, but I think he's really, really shows. I guess he shows his range, here.
It is really a showcase for him.
Yes,
because he was able to take on a persona he never did in live action.
Right.
And Top Cat was cool. I mean, he was the leader of the gang,
Right.
and that ties into, this is kind of very inspired by Bilko, even down to some of the cast members of the voice cast.
Right.
But also, I think there's definitely an influence from the East Side Kids / Bowery Boys movies.
I was thinking that, and I didn't want to say it, but you're absolutely right. Definitely, that's it's funny, yeah, because those characters, as you know, started as Warner Brothers characters,
right, with the Dead End Kids,
and now Warner's, of course, today has the rights to the Bowery Boys, which you've put out on DVD, which I love, and the. I want to quickly mention, as far as the cast goes, I just don't want to forget it. Alan Jenkins as Officer Dibble.
Speaking of Warner Brothers alumni.
I think he's in every Warner Brothers movie of the late 30s and, early 40s. So here he is again, and he's great. With voices, a lot of actors, most actors, the voice is exactly the same. You're not seeing him on camera, but he's Alan Jenkins. It's great.
And the writing of the show, I think this is really important.
Yeah.
You didn't have the typical animation writers working on the show. You had sitcom writers. I think one of the writers, I think, was a writer for Bilko, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah. And you also, and of course, as you said, the cast. We have at least, Maurice Gosfield, Doberman is
Right.
one.
And they
As Benny.
designed Benny the Ball, the character he played, to resemble his physical appearance as an actor. Short and plump, and he was a cute
Right.
cat. And
They're all
Marvin
cute.
Kaplan, Leo DeLion,
They're all
and
cute. I
the
remember.
one person who was a voice member who did a lot of other Hanna-Barbera stuff was John Stevenson.
Yes, I was going to say, do you, George? I don't know if you. We were kids when this first came on. I mean, little kids, as you said. I don't know about you, but I used to collect these things called TV Tinykins. Do you know what I'm talking about? These little
Yes.
these little things, these little painted figures. And I remember buying all the Top Cat characters because they were like really of a team. A whole bunch of of the similar but different cat characters. That was like a major collectible for me at the time when I was whatever age I was.
And very few of those survived because kids destroyed them. So they usually didn't survive a childhood. If you can find them, they probably go for a fortune.
Yeah, I don't think they would sell them anymore. I thought you were going to say that you can't find them because a lot of kids swallowed them because they really were.
That's very possible.
They really were small.
They were tiny.
Yeah.
Well, George and Jerry, the show only went for 1 year. So was it considered kind of a disappointment that it didn't go any further by Joe and Bill?
I've never read, Jerry, correct me if you know differently. I've never read anything about disappointment. I'm sure they would have wanted to probably continue and have it be a big hit like the Flintstones, which ran for 6 seasons. But they just moved on to the next thing, which was the Jetsons,
Right. Yeah, I don't think it was a big disappointment. I mean, like you said, also that it went almost immediately. I didn't know about that interim WNEW thing, but it went almost immediately to. I think it went on Saturday morning for a
It did.
seasons. Yeah, and then I think it was syndicated in some way. But it went to Saturday morning when Saturday morning wasn't really producing that kind of material yet.
Right.
That would come later, and so it was a big treat for the kids. I love that a year later, after what I consider a sophisticated adult, cartoon show, is suddenly on, for kids on Saturday morning. I find that fascinating. I'm almost insulted when people tell me, "Oh, I used to watch that on Saturday morning," when they talk about any of the primetime shows, because I have to point it out to them that the writing is really good on this. It's not just a piece of Saturday morning something. It's a very good show that just happens to have run on Saturday morning.
And to that point, I think my memory of seeing it like an early weekend evening syndication as a child,
Yeah.
I think it may have been one of those situations where they did a combination syndication deal for the reruns as well as Saturday mornings. I know that happened with the Flintstones early on, where
Yeah.
it was running on NBC on Saturday mornings, and it also ran as a daytime syndicated strip, after the network run. They had a lot of episodes, of course.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
there was Joe Barbera was such a great salesman. He would find any way to get the shows seen in any other possible way of monetizing them. And an interesting thing that also should be raised up is that when Top Cat headed to other countries and was dubbed in other languages, in Mexico, apparently very famous voice actors, or I should say very famous actors, did the voices, and there's still a huge popularity
Oh
for
yeah.
Top Cat more in Latin American countries than here.
Oh yeah. There was 2 theatrical CG Top Cat features that were made in the last, sometime in the last 15 years. They're hard to find, but they were put out on video somewhere. And I mean, it's just a big deal, the Top Cat. Oh, by the way, it reminds me of another piece of trivia. I'm just getting into trivia here about Top Cat, which was in England. You probably know this?
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
Yeah, they had a comic strip or something that was called Top Cat, and it was well known in England. Oh no, it was a cat food. I think it was. I think it was something like a cat food
Yep.
called Top Cat. So they couldn't call it Top Cat in.
Boss Cat.
Yeah, they called it Boss Cat instead. Now, my question is, are there any Boss Cat opening titles where it says that? That's what I want to see. I don't think there is. I think
We don't have them.
yeah.
They must have left them in London. I don't know.
If they made them, I kind of think that might be that I think they might have ran them and just had the I don't know, they might have had some singers re-sing the title and have them say Boss Cat, that kind of thing.
I'm going to guess this is not anything I know factually, and I bet there are a lot of people listening to this who know the factual answer.
Yeah.
But I think they probably left the theme song alone and just changed.
Okay.
That's it. That's that's my hypothesis. But someone with a little more education in the subject than I can give us a definitive answer.
My understanding is it was pretty popular in England as well, right?
It's popular everywhere. The shows are entertaining and they're very well written. And, I remember, and I think probably other people who are listening to this podcast may, if they grew up during that era, there was actually an LP of 2 Top Cat episodes, one on each side of a record, that was basically the soundtrack of an episode. It had been probably pared down a little bit in terms of time, but I remember as a kid just listening to the record because in those days we didn't have home video, we didn't have a way of seeing things over and over again. You could look at your pieces of still photography on a ViewMaster or a Give a Show projector or something, but we couldn't see these things, although there were little 8mm movies that were 5 minutes long or, that kind of thing. Top Cat stayed popular. And the reruns on Saturday mornings helped to keep it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's how most of us saw it was Saturday morning. And that's kind of what you think of. But going back to the writing you guys were talking about, that's why I think when you watch it now, and while as an older adult, you can still laugh and totally enjoy it just as much, maybe even more, because you understand certain things and you read into it the more adult, nuances or so. But it's that's why you can enjoy it so much now at an older age.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that to be able to see it now, also in the in the high definition, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that because of just everything you've done in HD, George. All that the Warner Archive has released this year, and you've released a lot of Hanna-Barbera. It's looked terrific.
And we wanted to be able to achieve the same thing, and we never know what we're going to find, how it's going to turn out. It's much more difficult with the segmented shows like Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear because they were absolutely torn to ribbons to remove sponsorships, and they were a mess that we're still in the middle right now of trying to put back together. But in this case, this was a complete scenario of 20 minutes or so in length. And we found that the main and end titles were a little were not taken the best care of. There's only one end title in color that survives. And that's why we have a special summary of all credits, as was done on the DVD. The Blu-ray will have a summary of all credits of everyone who worked on the series. But the reason when you see the end credits, if it all looks the same, it's because they only saved one, and it wasn't even an original negative. It's our only color source.
Wow.
We have black and white, but we don't have color. So the amount of archival archaeology that goes into something like this is enormous, and it took a great deal of time, and it's very expensive, but the net result is something that people can cherish, and it's cross-generational because multiple generations grew up loving this show.
Yep.
Hey, Jerry, where does this rank in terms of the popularity of all that golden era of Hanna-Barbera?
I don't think we have rankings like that, but the reality though of just hearsay, people I know, I mean the fandom of this show. I know people who aren't interested in animation at all, and they'll tell me, you know, the only show I liked was Top Cat. You know, I mean, there's definitely a fandom for this particular character. I don't know, you know. It's hard for me to explain. I just love the character design. I love what I call the situation of it, that Bowery Boise situation of it, and there really is no other show like that. Most of the other ones have more of a high concept, you know, the Flintstones, Stone Age, you know, family, that kind of thing. This is a cooler show, and he's a character we all aspire to be, kind of in that Bugs Bunny mold, in that, you know, he's got the answers. He figures out, you know, the problems. He's calm. He's confident. I mean, obviously, sometimes he flips out, but he, you know, he's a cool character, and that's what we like. We want characters like that. We either want them to be something we can identify with, or something we want to be. And Top Cat's one of those, something we want to be. You know, so you know, I anticipate that he'll find new success, you know, and new fans, especially in this new restored version. You know, that's the thing. Let's repeat it again. Restored cartoons like this. I mean, if you don't know it's from 1961, you know, or if you're just a kid and somehow, you know, you're binge watching this with your family, you know, it plays and is like new. There's really nothing 1961 about it, now that I think about it. I mean, maybe they use telephones that are on, you know, on wires.
Yeah, the police telephone.
Yeah.
But that's about it. It's fresh. You know, it has a fresh feel. And it's artistically valid, as I like to say, meaning it's just a good looking show. And you know, I mean, I can go on and on about all that. You know, I love when they use the old ink line. This is hand inked, hand painted. You know, they're using a big thick brush for the outlines because they want to make sure you'll be able to see it. They wanted to make sure you'll be able to see it with your bad reception on antenna television back in black and white back in 1961. But so really, we're really seeing it like we haven't before, and it really completes. I mean, George, you've put out Flintstones and the Jetsons, and so this to me, and Johnny Quest. This is, unless I'm forgetting something, this is the completion of the you know, the prime time set. Now that
I mean, there are things like New Adventures of Huck Finn, which we only did on DVD, but we still did new masters for it, albeit for DVD.
I'm thinking that early 60s.
Yeah, from the early 60s period, this fills a major gap.
Yes.
And, you know, Flintstones was done by the mothership. That was not Warner Archive, but Top Cat is most definitely Warner Archive, and we're very proud of how it turned out. And we hope that the fans really enjoy it when they get it at their doorstep.
Well, I am hoping that people are, supporting it. And as we've talked about on the podcast before, George, people need to, if they want more Hanna-Barbera, people need to step up. They need to show their support, purchase these sets. I don't think this set's going to have any problem doing that, hopefully. But I just want to remind people to do that so that we can get more Hanna-Barbera out to the fans. But along those notes, George, can people expect hopefully more Hanna-Barbera in the upcoming 2025?
Most definitely.
Oh, yeah. That's up to George to announce, but definitely
We've
more.
got a lot of surprises up our sleeve.
A lot of interesting stuff, and beautifully newly restored, and with extras and things you haven't seen. That's the cool thing about a Blu-ray, is that you can include those extra things to make it even more special.
Yeah, and
if you liked what you saw on the Jetsons, and I also want to this is a good time to address the Jetsons. We released the original network series of the Jetsons from the 60s. There were episodes that were rebooted in the 80s,
right?
But they were some, but most were not finished to film. They were finished to videotape, and they don't look good even up converted. And we stayed pure to the original network series. And a lot of people who don't know the history, like, where's season 2 and 3? Well, that was a different incarnation, and we wanted to stay pure to that original series. And it wouldn't have necessarily benefited from the Bose to Blue. When you're coming from a 35 millimeter color negative, you do have the boost and the improvement in quality.
Well, there's been a lot of excitement for the 4th volume of the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice series ever since you announced it, George, back sometime earlier this summer. And a lot of speculation. People love to speculate about what cartoons will be included. And I know you're not going to give the full list today, but what can you tell us about the upcoming release, just to let us know a little bit more about it?
Well, everything's on target, and we're going to have a November 26th street date. And I'm confident that despite the supply chain and production problems that we've been having, which we're still having, although I see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I apologize to all of our loyal customers if they're not getting their discs when they hope to. I'm one of the people that's waiting for some discs. That we see that problem is going to get better. But I'm confident that Looney Tunes Volume 4 will be ready for November 26th. And since the fans have been really great in their support for the series, and we did want to let people know the Volume 4 was happening, and we did. And so we're not ready to talk about everything today, but I did want to indicate one cartoon that a lot of people have been asking for, where the quality's been pretty pathetic in the past, and where we did go back to the nitrate original negative, the Technicolor successive exposure negatives to be precise, and remaster, and that is Peck Up Your Troubles, directed by Friz Freleng from 1945 with Sylvester.
Yes.
So that's a little. You heard it here on the extras first. That is going to be one of the 25 cartoons. Never before on Blu-ray or DVD and remaster.
Now, George, you told me there was going to be more than 25 because there might.
But I talked about 25 that fits what we said as the strategy for Looney Tunes Collector's Choice
Yes.
cartoons that had never been on DVD or Blu-ray before, or if they were on a DVD, it was not sanctioned by certain people, and they were not remastered cartoons and used as bonuses. So we don't count those.
Right.
But if it had been on remastered for a golden collection or a platinum collection, that's not what Collector's Choice has been about. If it was on only Laserdisc or VHS or not available at all, that's what it's been about. However, um, Peck Up Your Troubles is one of those cartoons that needed to be redone. And so that's the one that I really wanted to pass along as a taste of what's to come. But we did bend the rules a little bit by keeping ourselves at that 25, but adding 2 more cartoons.
So there's
Which
27 cartoons.
27.
Yeah, okay.
Technically, 2 of these cartoons have been on DVD before, but in a way that was not pleasing to the animation fan. And there were some cartoons that came out that, as we do with feature films, they were released on DVD in their theatrical aspect ratio. The fan community didn't like that because it cut off the top and the bottom of what they were used to seeing on television and on VHS. So there was a change in strategy to keep all the animation at 1:37 to 1 aspect ratio, open matte, and there are 2 cartoons which were previously released with their top and bottom cropped to theatrical aspect ratio that will be included on this collection as bonus cartoons in their open matte form, where you see the full aperture frame as originally animated. And those cartoons are from 1955, Stork Naked with Daffy Duck, and from 1960, Lighter Than Hair with Bugs Bunny. So those
Good one.
little tidbit hints we can provide today on what will be on Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 4. But in a couple of weeks, Tim, if you'll have us, Jerry and I would love to come back to the extras and talk about the whole release and all 25 cartoons and the 2 bonuses and everything in between.
Well, the obvious answer, yes, yes, yes. Anytime you guys want to come, I'll drop everything and fit you in the schedule for sure, for sure. And I'm loving these 3 previous volumes. I think everybody else is loving them as well. I was curious. I don't know if we talked about this, George, but what was kind of the, 2 and 3 kind of came out back to back, and then there's been this longer delay before 4. Well, what was the reason for that?
We needed to see if the sales of Volume 3 would be profitable, and it took a little longer for Volume 3 to be profitable than Volumes 1 and 2. But once we hit that point where management knew we were going to be able to deliver profitability with the Volume 4, we got the green light to go forward. That was the delay. So the takeaway is, if you love this stuff, you help us bring you more by buying at street date when things come out, because that speeds up the process of more.
Yeah, and I think that's true with all of these releases that the Warner Archive does. I mean, it's they're not the huge mass market, ones that are coming from the mothership, as you say, and so there needs to be the support from the get-go. If people just sit around and wait, yes, I understand, and it can be tough times for some people, but if you're a fan of it and you're going to get it, don't wait. Get that pre-order in, and you usually get that pre-order guarantee on a lot of the sites, and that'll give you the ammunition, George and Jerry, to go back to the studio, get in the vaults and get all of these classic films out to the fans, because there's so much more there.
Yeah. Also, I still hear from people all the time who didn't buy something when it came out, when we were urging people to get it, and then that particular thing That may not be the case here, goes out of print. And then they decide a year later they're going to get it. And now the price is triple what it was originally. And then they get it and they look at it. And I get so many people writing to me. Porky 101 is one of those things, but there's others where people will write to me and go, what was all the controversy about this? Because this is fantastic. People raving about a lot of our releases because they foolishly are listening to people online with negative opinions. I stand behind everything George has put out, the Warner Archive collection with cartoons. This is really, outstanding for collectors, and there is no hesitation. No one should have hesitation about buying any of these things, and it does help us to convince the powers that be to keep going if one orders, them, and we want to keep doing this.
And once you buy the disc, you own it. It's on your shelf. That's why physical media is so important.
Yeah.
Because things can come and go and suddenly they're gone. But if it's on your shelf, and especially with Blu-rays, which are very durable, you've got the knowledge that your collection is safe as long as you keep it properly cooled and don't let it bake in the back of your car. I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And we're really delighted to be able to do more of this as there continues to be support from fans, which we so deeply appreciate.
And I was just doing a little bit of math, George. 27 on the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 4. I suppose the retail is around $24. So we're talking less than
$21.98 list price.
Yeah, I mean, it's less than $1 for a film, many of which have never seen the light of day in this quality.
Less than $1 a cartoon.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you get such great value on these. So, but we have had,
and I also want to mention, since we talked about the 27 cartoons, these are on a BD50, and the bit rate, which is really important to me, to have a healthy bit rate and lossless audio, a lot of things that were missing from other iterations of animation years earlier. These will be at a bit rate of around 28, 29, 30, which is a very healthy bit rate, and they're going to look fantastic. And the content, it's almost 3 hours on the disc.
Wow. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, as always, George, Jerry, the time flies when you guys come on talking animation, talking Hanna-Barbera, talking Looney Tunes. And it's great fun to hear all of your knowledge and everything that you guys have to say about these releases. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
For those who would like more information about Top Cat, the Complete Series Blu-ray release, and the upcoming Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 4 release, be sure to check out our podcast Facebook page and our Warner Archive Facebook group. You can find the links to those and all of our social media sites in the podcast show notes. Facebook is also the best place to get the pre-order link for Volume 4 when it becomes available. If you aren't yet subscribed or following the show at your favorite podcast provider, you may want to do that so that you don't miss anything that we have coming up, including our future episodes with George and Jerry to talk about the Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volume 4. Until next time, you've been listening to Tim Millard. Stay slightly obsessed.